What is up, guys? Rickackis here, and this is how to make the upcoming DLC, The House of Wolves, an amazing addition to Destiny. In my opinion, the Dark Below missed out on a lot of key elements that kept it from being a very good expansion, and the House of Wolves can definitely improve on those mistakes and really benefit Destiny when it comes out. Now, the level cap increase with the Dark Below caused a ton of problems. It created a relentless grind for a lot of the endgame players, especially because they switched to a new kind of material, radiant material, and it just was, you weren't having fun trying to play the content that you paid for. Now, one of the things House of Wolves can avoid is just don't increase the level cap. Simply keep the level cap the same and just add a bunch of new content for the endgame players to explore. If you're 32, you stay 32, but you're still going to be trying to get all of the new weapons and exotics and raid materials and raid weapons added for the new content. Now, this is kind of just, a simple matter-of-fact thing that I think would improve a lot of problems that the Dark Below introduced. But I'm a realistic person, so I do foresee them increasing the level cap. Now, if they do, a couple of things need to be done. Firstly, all of the raids need to stay relevant. When the Dark Below came out and the level cap was increased, the Vault of Glass completely fell out of usefulness. There was no reason to do the Vault of Glass. And actually, originally when it came out, the exotics that you got from it weren't even the new 331 exotics. They were the old 300 exotics. And through an update, they had to change that. Whoever thought of doing that is a complete idiot. Like, at least have some usefulness. At least have the exotics awarded in the raid, the new 331 exotics. Because, as a result, really, not many people still continue to play the Vault of Glass, which is really sad because what was supposed to be the awesome addition of a new raid, and now you would have two raids to switch between, just became one new raid because one fell out of usefulness. And I've already talked about this before, but I don't want to see the same thing happening in the House of Wolves. A level cap is increased, a new raid is introduced, and the other two raids are completely useless. They really need to keep them relevant. And even if they don't upgrade them to the exact level, so if they increase the level cap to 34, even if the gear you get from the other two raids will only get you to 33, at least keep them relevant and not make them completely fall off the map. Secondly, upgrading exotics, so if they increase the level cap to 34 and they increase, let's say, the attack rating of weapons from 331 to 390, let's make it so that if you've upgraded your weapon, either exotics shouldn't reset or they need to be significantly cheaper to upgrade. If I've upgraded my Galahorn to 331 attack, I should be somewhat rewarded. When the Dark Below came out, there was absolutely no benefit at all to upgrading your weapon to 300 attack. So the most dedicated players, the most loyal players that really played a lot of Destiny and had upgraded weapons, they were the ones that felt left out, because someone who just started the game and just got a Galahorn randomly in a Vanguard Tiger Strike is going to be in the same position when they upgrade their weapon as someone who has loyally played the game and really grinded it out to upgrade their weapon. So again, it needs to be significantly cheaper to upgrade. Like, if you've upgraded 331, maybe it shouldn't cost an exotic shard to upgrade, and then maybe, depending on how much you've upgraded your weapon, relevant to how much you've upgraded it, the amount of glimmer it costs, it varies. Or again, just if you have upgraded 331 and you decide to upgrade your weapon, your perks for that weapon don't reset or something like that. But in any event, they should not just completely ignore the most dedicated group of players. They need to have some sort of benefit to players that have upgraded their weapons or armor. Now, the other main thing for the next expansion is more content needs to be added. People have really short memories, so I have to remind you guys that nearly every single place you could go for the Dark Below DLC, you were able to glitch into in the alpha and the beta. These areas were always on the disc. All they did was populate them with NPCs with a bunch of hive running around, and they said go for it. They really didn't add as much content as people were expecting. For the House of Wolves, this needs to change. Yes, the raid was a huge addition to the Dark Below, and it's going to be a huge addition to the House of Wolves, but I would like to see just more content. And, I mean, somewhere out there, Saturn and Mercury were supposed to be in Destiny. You can go back and watch the E3 2013 trailers, and you can see the opening clips of the ship landing on Saturn and landing on Mercury. Also, Mercury maps are in PvP. Somewhere in Bungie on someone's computer, there is a half worked on Mercury and Saturn. Maybe add one of them. Maybe add a new planet or a new place, completely new area to go for the House of Wolves, rather than just populating a lot of the areas that you can already glitch into. And in case you're wondering, this isn't just for the Dark Below. You can get into Fallen Catches. You can get into a bunch of places meant for the House of Wolves DLC already in the alpha and the beta. So again, more content needs to be added, not the same stuff that's on the disc, just populated with enemies. But aside from that, the content that is added needs to be changed. It's kind of ridiculous that they only added 2 strikes if you're on the PS4, but 1 strike for a $20 DLC? That's pretty poor, considering strikes are a lot of the endgame content. I think more strikes, less missions. Some of the missions for the Dark Below, I think, could have been turned into strikes, to be brutally honest, and should have been turned into strikes. Strikes are just way more important for the endgame and get way more playability rather than missions. Also, the missions that were added were done extremely poorly. When the DLC came out, like the day the Dark Below released, you were made to do all 3 missions. They only added 3 missions, and you had to do all 3 before you could do the Nightfall. Whoever thought of doing that is dumb and should be fired, frankly. That was such a poor decision, because it turned 3 decently good missions. Like, the layout of the missions weren't that bad. Doing 3 missions, learning about Omnigul, like kind of pursuing her, and then eventually killing Omnigul in the strike was kind of a good idea, but because you had to do all 3 missions, all 3 of them, before you could do the Nightfall, and doing the Nightfall was, you know, really wanted for that week because you wanted a chance at the new DLC exotics, it made the new missions that you could have been able to explore and learn about the lore at your own time, it made them into a chore, and it just wasn't fun. Those 3 missions I did as quickly as possible 3 times for my 3 different characters, just so I can do the Nightfall. If you're gonna add missions this time, Bungie, please make sure that you can explore them and do them at your own time, rather than making them a requirement for something that most players are gonna want to do. Also, more guns and ammo need to be added to the game. Only 4 or 5, depending on which console you're on, new exotic guns were added to the game. That's pretty poor. They should be aiming for a new exotic of each gun type, maybe even more. Now, the addition of legendary guns and some blue guns were actually pretty awesome. I'm glad they do that, and I hope they continue doing this. But what would really spice up the game is an addition of a new gun type. Now, I've been campaigning for this for a while, but just think about it. House of Wolves comes out and they say, hey guys, we added SMGs as a new primary. How awesome would that be? Having all the different rarities of guns, the PvP. I'm sure the PvP community would be absolutely completely in awe, because, you know, you can have blue guns that really function pretty well in PvP, and purple, and of course exotic, so the PvP community would be really exploring all of the different benefits of having certain perks and the different styles of guns for this new gun type for SMGs that would be good, and what maps they're good on. Like, it would be so much more playability and a change in gameplay if you added an entirely new gun type. But I'm realistic here. We're talking about the same people that still, at the time this video is coming out, haven't fixed the heavy ammo glitch, which is when you die, you lose heavy ammo. That's actually a glitch, and it has to do with the armor you're carrying. And that's been around since day 1. So I don't think they're gonna actually go out of their way to add an entirely new gun type. But what they can do is add better guns. Now, what I'm talking about is all of the exotic, like DLC exotics, were pretty shat. Like, honestly, you don't see really any of the DLC exotics see any end game play in PvE. They're okay in PvP, but they're really not utilized in PvE. And the reason is the Crucible. Now, I'm a little controversial in my opinions on the Crucible, but I think even if you're a Crucible player, you would agree that the same buffs and nerfs that are happening to the Crucible shouldn't transfer over to PvP. You'd have to be like pretty dumb not to see that what works in PvP doesn't necessarily work in PvE in terms of buffs and nerfs. Now the problem I'm talking about here is I'm not saying that they should remove the Crucible or that the new items that they're adding for the House of Wolves DLC like shouldn't be able to be used in the Crucible. I'm not saying that at all, but the problem with the weapons and the armor that were added for the Dark Below is that they were balanced for the Crucible, which they of course have to be, and so they were just lackluster in PvE. And again, the reason is because most people are at the end game. When the Dark Below came out, most people were very high levels and had a lot of the exotics already in the game. So when you add a new exotic, you're comparing it to the best exotics in the game. Like I was sitting there with Galahorn, with Icebreaker, and with a lot of the other amazing Service Regime, amazing exotics in the game, and so when these new exotics came into the game, I'm immediately judging them based on the best exotics I own, and so in that respect, they were just lackluster. And the same thing is going to happen again unless Bungie makes a change. Now what this change can be is PvE only perks. Simple as that. We already have them in the game. Certain armor, you'll see that it's more, light towards your super against minions of the darkness, so against non-guardian enemies. The Necrochasm has the ability to make, again, non-guardian enemies have a Cursed Thrall explosion. Stuff like this is the perfect answer to what I'm talking about. Have PvE only perks, more damage against majors, it lights PvE enemies on fire, stuff like that, so that the Crucible can still get this weapon and use it, but these perks will make it so that these guns aren't completely lackluster in the PvE experience. Again, all they gotta do is do what they've been already doing essentially and add cool PvE only perks in the gun, and it doesn't have to take away from the perk layout. Like if you imagine the perk layout of a gun, that's not set in stone. Again, all they really need is to have attachments focused on PvE, so it makes it so that they're not completely lackluster when they release, but remember that the Crucible is still going to be able to utilize them and they're still going to be unique in the Crucible, and so the Crucible gets that benefit as well. Both sides are happy. The last thing they could do is add a new tier of guns and armor. Think Pearlescent in Borderlands 2. Now Borderlands 2 I think kind of missed a little bit of the mark with the Pearlescent guns in that a lot of the Pearlescent guns in Borderlands were not just bad, they were nearly unusable. The Bearcat, the Wanderlust, unless you were like a very specific class and then a very specific build in that very specific class. So I think that if they were going to add Pearlescent, so if they added a completely new rarity, one above exotic, the gun should be good. That's the main thing. They shouldn't be better than exotics. They would be around the same power level as a lot of the exotics, but they would be cool. Make the Pearlescent guns, the guns and armor, the stuff we want. If you have a Pearlescent gun or Pearlescent armor, you shouldn't be walking around PvE or PvP completely god moding everyone, but it should be the freaking coolest looking stuff in the entire game. For example, Pearlescent gauntlets would have floating shoulder guards that hover above your shoulders, like made of massive spikes and just like held together with electricity. Stuff that looks so freaking cool that every player wants, but are at the same power level as exotics. So again, you don't just god mode everything. The weapons would just be insanely creative and different. You'd have guns that kind of shoot lightning. You'd have like rocket launchers that shoot rockets that travel at a walking pace but do monumental damage. Again, this wouldn't be overpowered or super useful, and if putting on a Pearlescent weapon wouldn't immediately make you just turn the game into easy mode, that's not what I'm asking for. I'm just asking for a new type of weapon that we can all look forward, and it would just be you wanting to get because it's so unique and it's so cool, but again, it wouldn't turn the game into easy mode. That is it for my ideas on how to improve House of Wolves. If you think I missed something or you think I'm wrong about something, please leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinions. I hope you guys enjoyed the video though. Please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe if you want more Destiny content like this, And as always, have a good day.